So good morning and welcome to today's Wednesday webinar hosted by the First Nations Health Directors Association. So I would like to acknowledge my home territory of the Musqueam Indian Band, but I would like to first acknowledge the many traditional territories on which we are collectively gathered today. I am currently on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam people. And my name is Corrine Paul. I am the manager of the health programs. I'm actually the health director for the Musqueam Indian Band, and I've been First Nations Health Director member since 2011. Can you believe it? Wow. I have served on the First Nations Health Director Association board as one of 3 regional representatives for the Vancouver Coastal Region since September 2018. And I would like to introduce my presenter. Kimberly, can you help me with that?
Yes. So we have the funding arrangements team who's
presenting today. Okay, I didn't know if there was one singular person. So health directors play an important role in the management and delivery of health services in all of our communities, and this includes administering budgetary and management decisions. It causes me so much anxiety sometimes, so that was one of the reasons that I wanted to host today, so that I could learn along with you, all of us. So health directors ensure financial management of programs and services, including financial accountabilities and funding agreement requirements. Today, we're joined by the FNHA funding arrangement team, Tanya Duncan, Bonnie LeBounty, and Audrey Henry. During today's session, the team will discuss tips on how your funding model matches or should match your health plan. So yeah, I think I'm in year 8 of a 10-year block. So these people will help us discuss ways to plan our budgets based upon our health funding agreements. The FNHA funding arrangement team supports health directors. All you have to do is reach out and ask. In understanding our health funding agreement, and a large part of our agreement is our budget. There will be an opportunity to ask questions following the presentation. Please type your questions in the chat box and then we'll have a record of them. I'd like to remind participants that we are recording this webinar and we'll be able to share it with others who aren't able to join us today. I'm looking forward to learning more about this important topic. I really am. So I will hand it over to the funding arrangement team. If you could please take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started. I can start and just say that I'm a Musqueam Band member. I've lived here all of my life, and I've been the health director now since 1994. Before that, I was the NADAP worker. So I've been working for Musqueam since 1990. So basically 100 years. Yeah, so I look forward to hearing from the rest of you and especially from the funding arrangements team. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So I'll do sort of the start off and kick off the meeting here. My name is Tanya Duncan. I'm the Director of Funding Arrangements. So I'm also from the Waibeke First Nation on Vancouver Island. I've been with FNHA for about a year now. Previous I was with Indigenous Services Canada. Bonnie is with me here today, and Audrey, they're going to be doing a presentation later, but I'll sort of share my screen now to just do a little bit of an introduction there, and Bonnie and Audrey will do an introduction of themselves when we get to their presentation as well. So let me just share my screen. Can everybody see that? Okay, good. So we're here to do a presentation to you all on the health funding arrangements piece. And welcome everybody, and thank you for inviting us to do this to you today. So for the quick agenda here, we're going to be talking about the health funding arrangements piece. So this is part of a 3-part series. So this part is actually the second part of that series. The first presentation we did was on accountability and looking at the reporting requirements with your health funding arrangements. So today we're going to be actually talking about the budgeting piece and the financial pieces with your health funding arrangements. And then I think in a few weeks or so, I think at the end of April, if I'm not mistaken, the last part of our series is going to be on terms and conditions. So just a little bit about who we are. So the funding arrangements advisory team is part of now the finance team within FNHA. The advisory under me has 2 teams, the community arrangements and the partnership arrangements. So looking at your community health funding arrangements and also the partnership arrangements, which look at the joint project board projects, some of the centers, the in-residential school centers and the daycares, not the daycare, the health centers on those pieces. Just sort of an introduction to the management team within the funding arrangement. So I introduced myself. So I'm there. You can see a picture of me. And then the 2 managers who are also on the call. So some you might be familiar with. So Michael Rupesin, who is the manager of community arrangements. And Kelvin Vanesh is the manager of partnership arrangements. Getting into the larger team, so some of these people might be familiar with you as well. This is the funding arrangements advisory team. So looking at the community arrangements advisors, there's a number of community arrangements advisors. So we have Joanne Neutral, who's the advisor for the North. Dan Julian, who's also an advisor. He was helping out Joanne in the North, but also looking at the ASOR stuff now. We have Bonnie, who's on the call, so she's looking after the interior region. Lana Leon, who's currently on medical leave right now, but she was looking after Vancouver Coastal and Fraser. Audrey Henry, who's on the call right now, she's looking after Vancouver Island region. Toby Pascal, she's advisor looking after the Vancouver Coastal and Fraser Salish region. And Tina Manson, who's currently on leave, a medical leave right now as well. She was looking after the Jordan's Principle and SET agreements. And so that's more of the community health. On the partnership side, we have Dawn Lee. So she was looking after the India Residential School, the NADAT treatment centers and the non-community projects. We have Yana, looking after the joint project board and any of the health actions envelope that we get. And then Anita also looking after the joint project board and the provincial health actions envelope. So that's sort of the entire team that we have in the funding arrangements. Looking at how we support communities. So looking at, we're also definitely, I know when it comes to, sorry.
Sorry.
Did somebody have a question?
It's Audrey. The slides aren't going forward. We're still on one.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's weird. It's
And
on
this
my
is-
computer. It shows it's going forward.
And this is Corrine, Tanya. Is there a way to get rid of the sidebar and just make your presentation the page that we see? And actually we can see your speaking notes too. I don't know if you want us to.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, I think maybe it got stuck at the beginning there somehow. Before you push the, slideshow.
1 sec, yeah, because mine just shows the full screen. I'll have to restart. 1 sec.
If you click it from current slide, once you're ready to resume, that'll just show the presentation.
Okay. Are we good? Or is it still showing the sidebar?
We're good.
We're good? Okay.
For me, it's showing, it shows the slide, how do we support communities? And then it shows next slide with,
Okay.
and
Weird.
it says, I think it's your little speaker notes too. It says,
Okay.
Yeah, I
Read
think
slide.
it's on, you've got a shared screen, possibly, Tanya.
Yeah. Because I have 2 monitors going. I think that's why. Yeah, I have my monitor and then my laptop. I think that's why it's doing that. So I'll just talk fast. I'll go through it. 'Cause I only see one screen and that's weird. So we'll just continue on. People can see the notes there, but looking at our team and how we kind of support communities, I think definitely I know over the past year has been quite of a challenge for everybody, specifically around the COVID and addressing the COVID and the needs in the community for that. And so we're here to, I think we sent out a number of communiques to help with that and address some of the questions we've been getting for communities. But we're obviously here to support the health directors with their funding arrangement, management of it, support and work in coordination with obviously the community development team in the planning aspect when it comes to your health and wellness plans. And then we also liaise with the regions and other program people within FNHA to assist you better. So looking at the health funding agreement with your community, we have our advisors directly working with you, and obviously there's a specific model to your community and what type of agreement that you have around that. And everything you need to know about your agreement can be found in your health funding agreement and the attached schedules within that. And Bonnie and Audrey will be talking more about some of those schedules and the budgeting pieces within that. Looking at sort of that continued support to First Nations, some of the information below around communities, communicable disease emergencies, looking at the planning, the PPE and infectious prevention and control and isolation support. So this kind of gives you a little bit of a snapshot of some of the other supports from those areas. And then the COVID email is always there as well for any additional questions that you may have specifically around on the CDE stuff. So looking at, as I mentioned in the beginning, the series sessions, the first session was talking about the accountability. So looking at the reporting requirements within your agreement. and reporting to FNHA and your membership. So the second series, what we're going to be getting into in a bit, is talking about the budgeting. So looking at discussing ways to plan your budgets based upon your health funding agreement and community health and wellness plan. And do you know what kind of health funding agreement you have and which funding modality each program is in? Set, flexible, or block agreements. So each of you may be in different categories within those agreements. So thank you. So that was more of a little bit of a snapshot introduction into the funding arrangements team. We have sort of a contact information in there, but more at the end of Bonnie and Audrey's presentation, they'll get more of contact information for you. But I just wanted to thank you for that. And I'll turn it over to Bonnie and Audrey for their presentation on budgeting. So thank you. So I'll stop share.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanya. And let's see how my sharing of my screen goes. Everybody, please let me know in a second. Here, we'll just go down. Okay. I'm going to do share. And we will go from up here. I can move this. Sorry, everybody, just 1 second. Okay, how does that look? Can everybody see the screen okay? Excellent. Okay. Thanks, everyone. All right, so as Tanya said, Audrey and I will be presenting on this budgeting portion. And so just introduction of myself. So my name's Bonnie LaBounty. I am originally a shooter from the Nicola Valley area. So I'm really fortunate to both work and live within my home territory. I'm a member of the Lower Nicola Indian Band. So I am the funding arrangements advisor for the interior region. So I'll let Audrey introduce herself.
Hi, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you everyone for taking the time to participate in our presentation today. It's an honor to be with you. My name is Audrey Henry. I am the Vancouver Island Regional Funding Advisor. I have the honor to carry two lines of ancestry. One is the New Channel line, and the other is the Coast Salish line. My father came from the DT Nation, and my mother is from the Penelakut tribe, where I was mostly where I am a member of. I do live in the Saanich territory on the Paquachin First Nation with my husband, and have been here for a number of years. I'm kind of new to FNHA. I still consider myself new. I joined FNHA in 2019. Prior to that, I was employed within community as the general manager, and have had those kinds of roles prior to. So I'm very honored to be with you today to talk about budgeting, and I look forward to our future conversations. Hi, Chika.
There you go. I told myself to mute when Audrey was speaking, and I forgot to unmute when I started to speak. So thinking of your journey of where you are today as a health director, and thinking of all those pieces that come into play in your role. There's a lot of different pieces. You wear so many different hats, right? So did you ever say to yourself, you know, I want to become a health director because I absolutely love this budgeting thing, right? So regardless of whether budgeting is your most favorite thing to do or whether it's your least favorite thing to do, it's still that reality, right? Because budgeting is such a huge piece when it comes to the successful operations of your programs and services. One thing, and Audrey and I will probably say this a couple of times, you might hear us speak about it a couple of times throughout the presentation, is there's not just one way to budget. It is absolutely up to you, your community, and your organization of just making those decisions of how you're going to budget, who's going to be involved, really what that whole process looks like. The one thing, though, that we will be speaking about is that it's really important to understand budgeting and how to budget within the parameters of your FNHA health funding agreement. So Audrey is going to explain a little bit more in terms of how that relates to your agreement with FNHA. So Audrey.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. So within FNHA, we have three different funding modalities. We have a set modality, a flexible modality, and a block funding modality. In each of those areas, we have different types of processes on how we can assist you. So as we illustrate in our slide here, when we're thinking about budgeting for the set agreement where some of you may have a strictly set arrangement with the First Nations Health Authority, you will definitely have to expend your funds in accordance with the program plan that FNHA provides to you. So in this funding modality, we assist the community in looking at how you want to spend your dollars to support your core health programs. But with the set agreement as illustrated in the photo that we provided here, it's really the most strict type of funding that we provide to communities. So your funding will have to remain in the areas that we allocate them for. So hence the solid rock. As we move to the flexible and block agreements, we tend to become a little bit more fluid and a little bit more, you have a little bit more flexibility in how you can spend your dollars. Your health funding dollars, I should say. So when we talk about a flex agreement, as illustrated in the photo that we provided to you, you can see that we have a little bit more ability to move your dollars to support specific programs within the areas that you're funded for. So for flexible and block funding, it's important to understand that what your funding model activity structure is. So when you're starting to plan for your budget, it's best practice to think about what are your fixed costs? What kind of dollars are you going to need right off the top that you know where those expenses are going to come regardless of what programs you're going to be offering. And the fixed costs always entail things that are solid. You know that it's going to happen. Things like wages, your building costs, your hydro, telephone, all those kinds of things. Those kinds of bills are going to come no matter what kind of program or what kind of dollars you have. You know that they're going to be there. And they generally have a fixed amount of dollars that you're going to use each month and per year. So as we move to the block agreement as illustrated, you have more fluidity in your funding. So meaning that you can support your programs based on your health plan that you're going to use. So you're going to need, like, for example, if you have a more concentrated area in servicing your elderly within your community, you know that you have a little bit more flexibility to do that if you don't have, let's say, as many births as you might have had previously. So you have a little bit more flexibility in your block agreement. So when you're thinking about budgeting and have your fixed expenses identified, there are the remaining funds are what you're going to look at to see what kind of activities you want to run based on your health plan. What are the health priorities that your community has, and how you want to, implement those kind of programming. Are there activities within the program that the community wishes to implement? These are the kinds of things that you're going to be considering when you're developing your budget and how you're going to be address those needs. I'll let Bonnie get into more detail on the next slide.
Great, thanks, Audrey. And just a tip, before the rest of you were able to join us, when we had our little pre-huddle, making sure our technical glitches were out of the way, Kimberly made a really good point, I think, right, Audrey, when we were talking about, like fixed expenses and looking at not just your last year, but having a look at maybe your last even 3 years. So when you're looking at those fixed expenses, getting an estimate of, what were some of those fixed expenses over the last 3 years, right? Because they are going to fluctuate from year to year. So it's a good idea to kind of get a bit of an average. So so Kimberly shared that really good tip before we started here this morning. Okay, let's have a look here. Next slide. Oh, I've gone too far ahead. All right, there we go. So this, what you see on the screen here is our funding model activity structure. It's what it's called. So by no means do you have to memorize this. It is something that's a really good tool, though, to have handy, especially when you are looking at budgets. So it is good. So, you have it handy. If you need a copy, absolutely connect with your funding advisor. We're happy to send you as many copies of this, electronically as you possibly want. And so I'll kind of walk us through it a little bit here. So as Audrey just stated, like each FNHA funding model is unique in that flexibility that they have. So this is where FNHA funding, it may be different than funding that you receive from other sources. So the higher the funding model, then the more flexibility you have, just as Audrey stated. The more flexibility for that increased decision-making and the increased financial control you have over your own delivery of your programs and services. So let's have a look at what this actually means. So I'm going to start off here because it does look, like a little bit tricky to digest all at once. But so over here, under this, and absolutely you don't have to memorize this, as long as you understand the way it works, that's the important thing. So over here it says sub activity level, and across here we have a lot of different headings. So here is like healthy child development, there's mental wellness, healthy living, right? So it goes all the way across. So we are just going to highlight and show you one. So healthy child development. So if you are in a set funding modality, so if you have a program in a set funding model, let's say such as under healthy child development, we have first one here is Aboriginal Head Start on reserve. So if you have your Head Start in a set funded model, that means you need to utilize the funds you receive for which they were intended for. In that set funding, you cannot have any maneuverability. there we go. You cannot change or move Head Start funds to somewhere else, right? They have to stay there for what they were intended for. And anything else, you know, if you had, let's say, your maternal child health program, that would be the same, right? And even like all of these. So if you, Brighter Futures, if that was instead, it has to remain within the Brighter Futures. Then when you get to a flexible funding modality, so we're looking here now in the red, right? So we have here circled in red, all these three. So the health promotion and disease prevention, public health protection, your primary care, they're all under here, under the primary health care. And then the same over here, you'll see under the health infrastructure support. So you'll see the health system capacity and the health system transformation. So with this here, you'll be able to see, you will be able to utilize some funds. So let's say, for example, you do not need as many funds over here for some reason. You can now, you have the ability under a flexible agreement to utilize funds from one section over here to maybe over here, right? But it still has to stay within the same sub activity level. So you have that ability to do some shifting here and also over here. And of course, that's also going to be based upon the needs of your community, as well as taking into account your community health and wellness plan and those steps that you are taking to make that plan, you know, a reality, right? So the most flexible agreement or funding modality that we have is block. So you're going to see here going around in green around the whole structure here. So that actually allows you to have the ability to utilize funding from even here, like under anything under the primary healthcare, over here to the health infrastructure support, right? And vice
Bonnie,
versa.
can I just interrupt you for a sec? Do you want us to hold our questions or just jump in?
Yeah, just if you can put the questions into the question box, and then we'll be doing the questions once we're kind of through these few slides. Thanks, Karine. Thank you. So so let's have let's now have a look at a few things here. A couple things to point out. You will see all underneath the supplementary health benefits is listed in a different font color. It's in blue. The same here under health facilities, right? And over here, you'll also see that same font coloring for the NADAP residential treatment, as well as the Indian Residential School resolution health support, and all of these under here, like medical transportation, your dental care benefits, right? So those are exceptions to what I was just saying. So the funding for these programs remains within what they are supposed to be or what they are intended to be utilized for. So you cannot use any funds, say for medical transportation, to move them anywhere else. They have to remain within medical transportation. So that's just, yeah, so anything in that blue font. I know it might be a little trickier to see on the screen, but certainly if you do need a copy of the funding model activity structure, we will be sending this out as part of the handouts after the presentation. So let's think about what this can potentially look like, right, for your community. Put it into a little bit of practice. So let's say that, well, change always happens, right? We know that where your community was or where your population was and the age of, you know, your community members, let's say 20 years ago is different from 10 years ago, which is different to even a couple years ago to now, right? So thinking, let's just say that you had, you know, no new babies being born in the last, you know, few years. And so maybe you didn't have a lot of programs and services offered, right, around, prenatal nutrition, parenting programs, because maybe you just didn't need that at the time because, you did not have any children at that age. So then all of a sudden, there's a baby boom that happens, and suddenly you have 12 pregnancies. So thinking then of, okay, you know what, we need to switch something up a little bit, right? So it's then thinking, okay, if you have any of these programs over here in the Healthy Child Development area, you might be focusing more on, there's your Head Start, your CPNP, FASD, your MCH programs. You might be focusing more here on things like prenatal, on things like parenting programs, right? On things like maybe baby food making, whatever it is that the parents are needing at that time. But as those children are getting older, their needs are going to be changing, right? So their needs and the family supports and the family needs are going to be changing. And so if you have a flexible funding agreement or the block, right? If you have flexible or block, and if your program, let's say if your Head Start program is in a flexible or block agreement, you then have the ability to utilize some of those funds from here to, say, going into a youth program, such as like Brighter Futures, or right here, like the Youth Suicide Prevention Strategy, or even over here, like the Aboriginal Diabetes Initiative, right? So you do have that ability when your program is in flexible or block to be able to better address or further address those needs for your population. One thing, though, that we really want to point out, and I hear about this, every once in a while, is, oh, but Bonnie, we have a flex agreement, or we are in a block agreement, so we don't have to worry about that. Even if you're in a flexible agreement or a block agreement, that does not necessarily mean that all of your programs are in flex or block. You very well may have programs that are still within that set funding modality. So that's something for you to very much be aware of. And so how do you find out which of your programs are in which type of funding modality? I'll let Audrey show you that in the next slide. So Audrey?
Thank you, Bonnie. There we go. So when you get your agreement at the very, or almost to the very end, you will find a funding schedule attached to that agreement. And in the agreement, it'll show the type of funding that you have. And in this example, we have a flex agreement. So when you receive it, you'll see that you have the years that are part of your agreement. So in this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5-year agreement starting in 2020, 2021. And we will list the amount of funding that you may receive as a community and for each of your programming. And here you will notice that for the area that's in orange shows that this is your flexible funding. This is where you will be able to support and have a little bit more flexibility in supporting your programs for these areas. But it's important to note that for the health infrastructure and capacity system, it should own that money should be spent in this area. Primary health care needs to be in, and primary health promotion. You have the flexibility to move things around in primary care. And this is emphasizing what Bonnie had already shared. So here, this is where you'll find the amount of dollars that you'll be receiving within your flexible area if you're in a flex agreement. It'll also be similar if you have a block agreement. It will show up in the top left-hand corner, it'll show that you are in block, and it'll show the areas that you're funded for your block programs. and where you'll have the flexibility to be able to support each of your health areas. It'll always be based on your health plan. And because like Bonnie said, there may be areas where you're going to, or there may be years where you're going to perhaps have a baby boom, or perhaps there'll be more elders within your community that are home that you'll be able to look after. So you'll be able to move those support and make adjustments to your health plan and your budgets when you're based on the amount of dollars that you receive. And when we move, also we do tell you where your flexible or your block funding is, and we also share with you what you're funded for in set programs. And in this case, we share that medical transportation, which is generally one of the areas that is continuously set in a set funding modality, and that's because we do have parameters around medical transportation that we follow and try to support our communities in that specific area. And here in SET, we also use the example of the Aboriginal Diabetes Initiative. So these areas, so in this example, we would only be able to spend our budget, which is $78,000. We'd be able to spend that only in our Aboriginal Diabetes Initiative. And for medical transportation, the amount there, which the example shows at $2,814, that can only be spent in medical transportation. So you would really need to consider that while you're creating your budget. So you have some flexibility, and you have some areas where you will concentrate that funding for those specific programs. Thank you, Bonnie.
Great, thanks, Audrey. There we go, now it's turning. So decisions regarding funding, who receives what funding, how much the funding is for, it's not up to the your funding advisors or the funding advisory team to make any of those decisions. What we are here to do is we're here to help support you in understanding your health funding agreement from FNHA. So we provide you the information about the amount of funds you receive and what you receive them for. And we can also provide you information about the flexibilities of the agreement that you are currently in, as well as, again, just talking again about what type of funding modality each of your programs is in as well. So the rest of it really is up to you in your community and organization to decide how you're going to use that information when you are creating your budget. So we have a few tips here, or a couple of points that we jotted down, like things to consider when creating your budget. And so we're going to leave it up to you from now, from this point on, just to kind of open up for questions. I know that Michael, looks like Michael was sharing some things or answering some things in the chat box. But absolutely from now on, yeah, absolutely feel free to ask questions, and we'll do our best to give you whatever information you're looking for.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. And just a little bit of a hint on the administration costs. We do not count medical transportation as part of your administration costs. Medical transportation has administration costs included in medical transportation already. So when you're thinking about your administration expenses, it's a good idea not to include your medical transportation in part of your planning process. But the remaining administration fees, which the First Nations Health Authority, but it's totally up to the nation. But as far as our limitations go, we will allow up to 10% of your budget. But many nations try to go lower to ensure that most of their dollars are used for medical services. Some go at 10%, some go 7%. It's really up to you. But the only point I wanted to make is that when you're thinking about your administration fees, medical transportation already has an admin fee attached to your budget. So it's just something to consider while you're creating it. And like, we're up for your questions and discussion.
Okay, I see a couple in here, and I think most of the questions Michael may have answered. Let me just kind of roll through them just to make sure. And maybe we can, if there's questions, we can get to whoever has that additional questions. Yeah, so we will send copies. And there is a question in here about receiving a copy of the funding model activity structure. We will send copies of that as well as the presentation to you. I see a couple of requests for that. We will certainly send that. As well as Tanya had mentioned, we will send some frequently asked questions. So we do have some of those to send as well. And somebody actually loves our funding model activity structure. So that's great to hear. Please send the model. Let's see. Is there any area in Flex to utilize funding for patient travel? Oh, and I see Michael has already responded to that. We're able to reimburse patient travel. Transfers not allowed. So yes, so when you do have a deficit in your patient travel, that's why it's really important to provide us the information, right, and those financials to us as soon as possible, because if you do have a deficit, let's say with your patient travel, and your community is having to carry that, right, with whatever cash you may have on hand, and we understand that sometimes it's really difficult because maybe you just don't have a lot of those surplus funds kind of lying around, right? And so that's why it's really important for you to provide us that information as soon as possible, so that way there, Paul Claremont and his team can work on things as quickly as they can. So if you are providing us your financials regarding that medical transportation piece, later, then that means that if you are in a deficit, then you will be carrying that deficit longer. Right. So that's why it's really important to send in as soon as you can when it comes to that medical transportation piece. Let's see. Michael's already responded to a few things here. And Calvin.
I did see a question, Bonnie.
Okay, go ahead, Audrey.
A bit on will FNHA be presenting a budgeting training for new health directors? And we are currently not providing in-depth training for budgeting. We do have some linkages for resources for budgeting, but understand though that we're really fortunate in our team as funding advisors that we have some background in budgeting, and we would be, on an individual basis, we would be able to help you to walk through your budget with you. So if you need some one-on-one support, definitely talk to your funding advisors, and your regional funding advisor, and they would work with you through getting you through your first, second, and even third, or however many rounds of budgeting processing that you need. So please feel free to reach out to us. And also, like I said, we do have some limited resources as to for budgeting training, and I think the AFOA has some programs that are available to, as the person put it, newbies, available. And if we find links, we definitely share it with the communities as well.
Great, good point, Audrey.
Can I just jump in as well for?
Yes, please, Calvin.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Audrey. I did just want to mention as well, to follow up on that, in terms of a budgeting course, it is something that an internal group to the FNHA is working on. I was able to provide some feedback on this probably about a month ago now, in terms of putting together an actual curriculum. So it would be delivered online, and it's specifically targeting health directors in terms of, bless you, Audrey, in terms of budget preparation. So once that is released, I'm sure a communique or something like that will go out to health directors. But in the meantime, just sit tight, and it's coming up quickly. Oh, and I see Tanya just messaged me, and she said she's asked Karen to respond as well. So we're getting lots of information on this.
Okay. And let's see, a couple of others in there. Oh, Michael is providing all the information. If there's anything specific that you have questions about that you want to ask offline, then that is absolutely okay. Just let us know when we can connect with you, or have your funding advisor connect with you to discuss whatever it is that you have specific questions about for your own particular agreements. So Michael, is there anything else that I missed in the chat box here? I'm just wondering if there's anything else.
I think I covered everything, or
You did.
if anything, I just need to, how to say, the question for Health Director Lorraine, I think Lorraine Harry from Humalco. This is like a process or a service delivery that you may require some discussion with the health benefits, medical transportation program manager. Again, I forgot, Paul Claremont.
Yes.
If you can discuss this like process of service delivery and how things can be reimbursed with Paul Claremont, just like what we can say is basically we provide the benefits to the person, or the benefits to the person in terms of the mileage, meals, and everything. So, but the thing is like, you're saying you're leasing a vehicle, you have a driver. There is like a collective approach to it, but again, the benefit is for the community member. And I would suggest like, discussing this with Paul Claremont directly. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. So it doesn't look like we have any more questions in here. So yeah, absolutely connect with Paul for anything like related to the medical transportation piece. I'm just wondering if anybody else wants to talk a little bit about, maybe we'll talk a bit about, knowing that we have some time here, aligning your budget with your community health and wellness plan. How does that sound, Audrey? Is that all right? Yeah. I'll do this. I'll start off and then Audrey can add in anything she wants. So your community health and wellness plan is a huge undertaking, right? And it was something that I know that many communities have spent a lot of time on, community consultations, getting input from all of your community members, your elders, your youth, your adults, your children, your staff. And so when you compile all of that input, it really is, it demonstrates the needs for your community members in terms of their health and wellness, where they want to be and where their vision is for the future. So looking at the budget pieces for that, it's budgeting in those steps, right? So it's the role of the chief and council or your board of directors and the health directors and your staff to really put that plan into action. And that's where the budgeting piece goes. So it's looking at, okay, this is where we want to be, 10 years from now. This is where, we're hoping to be 5 years from now. What are those small steps that we're going to be able to take and kind of chunk down, right? Program to program that you have, and using the budget that you have, right? Because we do know that, we can have a beautiful vision, but exactly how are we going to make it there? And looking at, your objectives and goals for each of these areas and seeing what are we going to focus on this year and how are we going to utilize our budget to do it this way? When you are in that flex or block funding modality for particular programs that we just talked about, and you have that flexibility, or if you have that flexibility to utilize funding, between different programs, that gives you better opportunity to further enhance or address the needs of which your community members wish you to target, right? And to do that, let's say, for example, you have maybe part of your plan could be, okay, your community members would like to start seeing some of these activities. Well, having a good understanding of what, program that activity could be under is something to be aware of. So you might have, let's say, let's go back to like the parenting, thinking of, the example that we used before. So thinking about, parenting, right? Maybe one of those steps that you want to take is, enhance the parenting programs that you already have, or maybe you don't have any currently, but you'd like to do so. So where would you be able to put, for example, parenting program, right? Could that be under, program A or program B? And having a look of how that's going to fit financially, right? Looking at your budget, under this or that. And so that's where things kind of get connected with your community health and wellness plan. And as well, if you are in that set funding modality, how that also connects with the program plan. So Audrey, maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the program plan and how you can use your program plan for that?
For sure, Bonnie. I just want to mention first, though, that one of the reasons, the biggest reason that budgeting is so helpful to us as human beings and as health directors and whatever area that you may be even managing, is the tool. A budget is a tool. And the reason why we have that tool is to understand that we have Unfortunately, limitations within the amount of resources we have to carry on any type of program. Doesn't have to be health. It could be general administration. It could be O&M, whatever. But to understand that while we're developing our plan, yes, we need to dream, and we need to say, okay, gee whiz, you know what? It would be really wonderful if we had a swimming pool in our community. I'm just thinking a little big, right? We had a swimming pool in our community. Well, unfortunately, although we have it within our health and wellness plan, we don't have it within the resources to create our budget with. So therefore, well, maybe we can have, in our case, because we live on Vancouver Island, maybe we can have some swimming programs in our local pool areas if we want to do the pools. Plus, we have a great big pool around our whole island called the ocean. So, but you know, when we're thinking of our budgets, we also have to think about, okay, if we can't have a pool, what can we have? What's the alternatives that we can use our budgets for? Because this is what we currently have. Is there areas that we can enhance it? If so, what are they? There's really things that we kind of really need to think about as we're looking at how much resources we have and what the priorities are for our community when we develop our community health and wellness plan. So for our program plans, the FNHA really does try to support our communities in trying to maintain the core services that need to be offered within our communities. And those include things like the home and community care programs, in some cases, depending on your location, your medical transportation. And I think we had a lot of conversation about that with questions that we are definitely leaving to our expert departments with that in Paul Claremont's team. And if you have Head Start, that's definitely program developed along with your ASOR advisor. So we really structure and support set funded programming by offering a program plan that we send with your agreement. And you have that just to guide you to ensure that when you're developing your budget, okay, this is what I have. And if I bring you back to that slide where we had the set and flex areas, okay, this is what I have to spend in my ASOR program. So with that, I need, and as we also, if I can please bring you back to when we first started our conversation about what are our fixed costs? We need to, whether you're in a set, flex, or block agreement, we still have to know what those fixed costs are. So we need to make sure that that's included in our budget. And we, again, for set budgets or set funding, we will provide that program plan for you to ensure that you are taken care of. And if there is some confusion in that area, reach out to your funding advisor, because we will definitely stand with you to try and make sure that we're working to develop further your program plan. Or if we also have an awesome team called the Community Development team who assists us. We work with them to develop your community health and wellness plan and program plans. And also for the block agreements, they can also assist in looking at the steps you require to take when you're developing your evaluation that you're required every 5 years. So reach out to us. The program plan is the easiest one, because we support you in sending that to you with your agreement. and read through it, and it'll definitely help you in your budgeting. But if you have some questions around your program plan, then reach out to your funding advisor. Thank you.
Great. And I don't see any further questions here that I can see. But absolutely, just as Michael just typed in the chat box, thanks, Michael. Absolutely feel free to reach out with any of us. So reach out to your funding arrangements advisor. We will provide any supports that you have regarding anything to do with your budgeting, anything to do with your reporting, your financials around your health funding agreement with us. So I think is that it for questions, everyone? Unless there's anything else?
Bonnie, what I can do is go into the feature and just allow them to talk.
Sure,
And,
we can do that, Karen.
yes.
If anybody wants. And absolutely, like right now as well, if you have any really good tips that you have done or have you that you found in the past to work really well when you're doing budgeting, so either as a community or organization, who to include, absolutely, just please feel free to share some of those tips as well.
Or even your challenges. I know that in organizations, we have different teams and that work on different things, and so that sometimes creates a few challenges. Please feel free to share any of those as well to see, because networking is a great way to find some answers. I just wanted to share. If you have challenges, please share. Thank you.
So everybody's good? Nothing else?
I'm Josephine Frost here.
Hi, Josephine.
Hi, how are you? I found the challenges that we had is as health directors, and we oversee our health departments, is to get our health lead departments to take budgeting courses for their departments, because you can give them out their budgets and sit down with them and let them know, okay, this is for the fiscal year, this is what you're allowed with them. And I find that I spend more time in my office going over the budgets with them, saying, okay, well, what were your expenditures? Because for their departments, because they have their own departments in their accounts and their codes, and they sign it off. And last year we did a training for all staff to take Excel, and we're looking for another budgeting courses, because it's in a high demand with them as well, not only for them but also for the health directors, for that, so that we could try, so that we're not running around at the end of the fiscal saying, okay, where were we at with our budgets? What department, who has deficits, who has surpluses?
Right.
And I find that I spent, I would say the last month with my 9 staff to 10 staff in and out of my office all the time, bringing in their budgets. And then, so I got it to now to where we're going to look for another training course for them to assist them. But I got it to where now to where they keep all their department invoices that they spend, so that we can just grab it, tally it up with them, and show them where they're at with it. So I think that's one of the red flags that I see, and I think that moving forward in a positive direction, that's something that I was saying. That's why I was asking also for the newbie health directors, if First Nations Health Authority would ever think of, and I was glad to hear that it's coming down the pike, was to offer some kind of training certificate program to help the health managers, especially the newbies that are on board. Josephine, those are just some of the things that I've.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josephine, to add, I guess, another layer to what you were just talking about, right? So you said, like you having, let's say, like 9 staff who are, looking after their own departments and their own, their own coding, things like that. Their surpluses, deficits, absolutely. That could be a little challenging for sure, right? So I think one of the questions that comes up that I have encountered is, like how often should we be actually reviewing or recommending to the departments, right, to be reviewing where you sit financially. And so is there any tips out there from other health directors? Like how often are you sitting down, I guess, with your staff and reviewing it? And the other piece in there too is, how, I guess, the funding activity structure can work, right? For that we just kind of reviewed. So if you're in that flexible or block agreement, but do your other staff from your other
this is going to go to
right? So and what would that look like when you're thinking about your budget and budgeting from one program to another? I guess.
Quarter review
tips about that.
Quarter reviews are good, but it's still, even if you get the quarter reviews and you review it and you sit it down with them, you still got to go over it with them. And they're eager to learn too as well, so that they can stay within their budgets and that. So quarterly, like they stated, are good to have and out there. But even then, with that, they're still coming into your office saying, okay, well, this is what it reads. Can you go over it with me again? I don't quite understand it. For that. So those are some of the things, and that's some of the things we're going around. That's all I have to say, Josephine.
Thank you. Thank you, Josephine, for sharing.
Josephine, that's a really good example that I think many health centers are maybe challenged with in terms of trying to, even staff understanding the budget. That's and Excel is a wonderful opportunity to have even basic Excel to have to be offered to staff to kind of get a little bit of a small picture of what their spending would be like, and maybe comparing that to with the GL that perhaps is provided by your finance department to say, okay, this is what I've spent in this area, and I need more in this area. I'm overspending here, just to keep track of where we are with budgeting. It's definitely a big area that we need to concentrate on for sure. But like I said, you're on the right track, Josephine, in offering the Excel training. And what I might suggest for totally brand new newbies is that even if you started using a Word document with numbers to say, okay, I have this much money, I want to spend this much in this area as a start, and then graduate to your Excel sheet, and then marrying that with the GL. I think that's, it unfortunately is a slow process, but is an extremely necessary process to build the capacity within your staff, to have them understand where they would need to be. And when we're sharing that information with our staff, we also want to say, shoot for the stars, because when we support our staff to say shoot for the stars, and we're also letting them know that we support them in building that capacity and expanding their horizons to do a better job, and two, have more confidence in the work that they're doing as they move forward, because that's something that, oh my God, I learned this today. I have a new skill, and it's like learning a new recipe for me, right? It's like, oh my God, I know how to do this now. So it's just something that, lifts up our people to allow them to have something new that they can have. And one of the priorities for FNHA is building capacity and your support in building that with your staff is just, it's going to be, you know, it's a wonderful opportunity. And thank you so much for providing that to your staff and giving them that opportunity to reach out and take the Excel training. But Excel in itself is so scary to begin with. So the beginning part is actually not too bad. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I have a tool now that I can use for this. So thank you so much for doing that for your staff.
Great, thanks for sharing. And I'm just recognizing where we are in the time. So absolutely feel free to connect with any of your funding advisors for questions. So I am going to hand it over now to Tanya again, and she can have some final words from our team. Go ahead, Tanya.
Great. Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Audrey, for that presentation. So, well, thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure and honor being with all of you today, and thank you for your time and attention to our presentation. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. I know budgeting is such an important planning process within each of your communities. And I hope with this presentation provided some guidance and assistance to your work, and hopefully it didn't do any further confusion. But like Bonnie said, the funding arrangement advisors are there to assist you and support you with your health funding arrangement, and they are there to assist and answer any questions you have with the funding arrangement, and available to do any one-on-one training specifically around. We have our FA 101, which kind of goes from the start to finish of the funding arrangement. So that's there for you as well. But if anybody has wants some more information or has any question about today's presentation, please do not hesitate to connect with me or any of the advisors or Michael or Calvin on the call. So I just wanted to thank you. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and I'll turn it back over to Corrine or Kimberly for their closing. Well, thank you.
I was just looking at how to unmute. Thank you very much. I really would like to thank Josephine, and I hope that's the correct name, one of our health directors that shared with us what she does with her staff. And I think that's a wonderful idea for the rest of us. And I also really wanted to say, I don't think it's just for the newbies. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I really appreciate any information that can help me, any training, just like I think it was Audrey said, any training, or maybe it was Tanya, that can be a tool to support me. I get scared. Sometimes when I look at my budget, I feel like, oh, I can't do this. I do this for my people. I really want to see those gaps and those disparities lessened. I want to see my people live healthy, longer lives. So sometimes when I look at the budget, I get frightened. And when I see things like Excel spreadsheets, or when my chief financial officer wants to have a meeting with me, I feel like my heart is just pounding sometimes. So I really appreciate the support, and I really like to know that FNHA is there to support us. And speaking the FNHDA, I would really like to extend our thanks to Tanya, Bonnie, Audrey, and the funding arrangements team for taking the time to present to us today. And thank everyone else for joining us and for your participation. There's a lot of information in the chat box, and I look forward to the emails that we will have sent out to us. It was me, I was the health director that loved the health funding model activity structure, and I really look forward to having that as a tool in my toolbox. So we hope you will join us on April 21st for our next Wednesday webinar. FNHA funding arrangements team is back and we'll be discussing terms and conditions. Until then, everyone enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe and stay well. Thank you. Hype Kasiem. Hype Sup Kasiem.